This is part 2 of a step-by-step guide to learning full stack development from scratch. In first part, we talked about code editors, Git, and basic front-end stuffs. In this video, we will talk about intermediate level front-end skills. Once you have gotten the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can start getting into more advanced skills in front-end development. We will go through practices and tools that will help you build more marketable skills as a web developer. But before I start video, if you are new to HackersFriend, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We have tons of videos coming on career guidelines like this one and tricky coding problems, startups, new innovations, developers lifestyle and a lot. With that said, let's begin second part of our journey to becoming a full stack developer. Responsive design is a must in this mobile-friendly world. When websites were first around, there were only one way to view them, on your computer. Smartphones and mobile data didn't really exist yet. When making a website, you only had to worry about how it looked on computer. But now, according to statscounter.com, more people are using their phones than their desktop computers to browse the internet. So we need to make sure that all our website look good and work everything on biggest monitor to the smallest phone. This practice is what's known as responsive design. It is called that because the design can respond to any device that is viewing it. You can test how responsive a website is by manually changing the width of your browser window and seeing how the design looks at large and small widths. Building a truly responsive website involves a lot of planning in designing phase, and you will have to plan about how they will look at what width. And in the web development, it involves using media queries to control which CSS properties are being used at specific widths. As you might imagine, coding all the CSS of a responsive website takes a lot of work. If you cannot spare a lot of time, you might try using a responsive framework like Bootstrap. The beauty of these frameworks is that they come pre-packed with custom CSS and JavaScript. They have done a lot of work for you by pre-styling elements like headlines and buttons. They also come with JavaScript components, essentially little plugins like modal pop-up window and navigation bars. Since you are using something that's already been tested, it will make building your website a lot easier. The only caveat is that you shouldn't become too dependent on frameworks, because there is no substitute for knowing how to build a responsive website from scratch. A link to tutorials from where you can learn these frameworks will be given on article page of this video. Sass will save you time and headaches while writing CSS. Once you have gotten the basics of CSS down, you should start to learn Sass because it is simply awesome. It's even in the name. Sass stands for syntactically awesome style sets, and it is described on its website as extension to CSS. It makes writing your CSS styles much easier, more intuitive, and faster. Don't get me wrong, CSS is great, but as you will get into it, you will realize that regular vanilla CSS can get quite tedious. And if you are not super organized in how you write your styles, your CSS style can quickly become frustratingly tangled. What CSS Sass does is give you more power and control. There are a couple of examples how Sass will make your life easier. In mixins, instead of copying and pasting the CSS code for certain elements a million times, you can use mixins. They allow you to write a set of styles for an element just once and reuse as many times as you want. In nesting, Instead of writing all the parent class of a specific style, you can nest all the children inside the parents' styles. This also cuts down on a lot of duplicate work. Links to tutorials of SASS will be given on article page of this website. And one important note is, since the browser cannot read SASS files itself, you have to compile your SAS files into CSS. In order to do this, you will have to use something called a building tool and run it on your computer, then generate a CSS file and put that file on the server, which will be sent to browsers. And talking about tools to build, we have build tools. You have probably heard one or several of these terms: npm, webpack, grunt, gulp, power, yarn, and list gets pretty long. These tools are often described as build tools, task runners, task manager, or now what do I have to install tools. Build tools like grunt, gulp, and webpack are commonly used to do some of these tasks. Processing SASS file into CSS, concatenating, that is combining multiple CSS files into a multiple JavaScript file into a one big CSS or JavaScript file. Minifying, that is compressing CSS and JavaScript files and even image files. Automatically refreshing your browser with the updated CSS or JavaScript code. Sure, many of these tasks you could do yourself by hand, but having to do it over and over again every time you make a small CSS or JavaScript change gets tiring. So which build tool should you use? At the moment, Webpack is taking over the field, but Grunt and Gulp are still in use. You would definitely learn Webpack, but it couldn't hurt to learn either Grunt or Gulp. Gulp is faster and seems a bit easier to get up and running. In addition, in order to accomplish all those tasks, you generally need to download and install plugins or packages. There is where a tool like npm, that is Node Pack Manager, Bower, or Yarn comes in handy. These are tools that allows you to quickly install packages to your computer by typing commands into your computer's command line. They are tools to get you more tools basically. The npm is the dominant package manager right now. You should definitely learn how to use it. Bower was one of the first package manager tools, but it's officially obsolete. The creators of bower.io now recommend using Yarn. Yarn is a very npm-like tool created by Google, Facebook, and other of those promises to fix some of these issues that npm has. While Yarn is in the minority, I would still recommend checking it out as it seems to be gaining popularity. Links to tutorials of these building tools and libraries will be given on article page of this video. Everyone loves JavaScript frameworks. You have probably noticed a lot of JavaScript frameworks, libraries, tools, etc. being thrown around. You know all those names that end in .js. Let's first take a step back and define what a JavaScript framework is. Depending upon who you talk to, the term framework, library, or toolkit may or may not be interchangeable, but they are all essentially tools that do some of the work for you. A framework is a pre-built structure that you build upon. Generally speaking, a framework is a system of working parts created by someone else. To use this framework, you install it to your own website files. Then you work off that existing structure, adding on to it to accomplish what you want to do. Using a framework is like buying a bare bone house that comes with all the structure components: foundation, frame, roofs, but it is not the complete house. You still need to go in and attach the water and electricity, as well as install cabinet, paint the walls, and decorate. Some examples of JavaScript front-end frameworks are jQuery, React, Vue, and Angular. A library is a set of pre-made tools that you add to your own structure. In comparison, a library is a collection of individual components that you can take and plug into your own system. This is the main difference between frameworks and libraries. While frameworks are pre-made structures, libraries aren't a structure in themselves. They provide additional functionality for existing systems. To continue the home building analogy, you can think of libraries like appliances that you choose to add to your house. Machines like ovens, saws, and air conditioners all perform the distinct function. But you have to install them into an existing home in order to use them. For example, of a library using the above categorization is jQuery. jQuery is a JavaScript library that doesn't have any kind of a structure in itself, but it has over 300 different functions that you can use. Again, these definitions are not agreed upon by everyone. React and jQuery categorize themselves as libraries, and Angular and Vue call themselves as frameworks. Which brings us to the next topic, uh, the big three in JavaScript frameworks: Angular, React, and Vue. In early 2010s, there was an explosion of frameworks ending with JS, almost a new one every 1 month. However, as we approach 2020, the field has cleared and we are left with the three big winners: Angular, React, and Vue. JavaScript frameworks may have started out as a trend, but they are definitely here to stay. JavaScript frameworks are very popularly used by almost all developers in pretty much all kind of web development. Angular, React, and Vue all are growing, and JavaScript itself is extremely popular right now. It is the most used technology for the fifth year running in Stack Overflow annual survey. In addition, Stack Overflow publishes trends of technologies based on how many questions are asked per month. You can check. Angular has the most volume, and both Angular and Reactive has pretty steep growth over the past year. The state of JavaScript survey shows that React leads in the number of developers who have used it and loved it, while Angular doesn't seem to be quite as interesting or hold as much desire for reuse. Vue has a lower amount of actual usage, but it is the leading pack in terms of being a technology that developers want to try in the future. So it is feasible that Vue could become a bigger player in the next couple of years. However, I think all three are sticking around for at least next several years. So the important question is, which framework should you learn right now? Well, it depends. If you are seeking to land a full-time web developer job, I would browse your local job listing to see which framework seems to get mentioned the most. And if you are learning right now without that specific end in your mind, Vue is a good place to start for beginners. It is lightweight and documented quite very well. However, I personally wouldn't learn only Vue. It would be a good idea to eventually add either React or Angular to your toolbelt, depending on your liking. Links to tutorials for these frameworks and libraries are given on article page of this video. So that was part 2 of guide to becoming a full stack developer. In part 3, we will get into backend technologies and databases and all other stuffs that hold websites and make them run from behind scenes.